The snow fell heavier that night than anyone had expected. It wasn't the kind of gentle winter snowfall that made the city look beautiful. It was the biting, relentless kind that seeped through layers, chilling the soul. On a dimly lit street corner in Chicago, a young woman named Emily Carter stood clutching her worn backpack and the small blanket wrapped around her 3-year-old daughter, Lily. Her shoes were soaked through. Her hands were trembling, not only from the cold but from the exhaustion of another night with nowhere to go. The city lights flickered in the distance, but hope, real living hope, felt 1,000 miles away. For 2 weeks, Emily had been drifting. She'd lost her job at a local diner after the owner sold the business. The rent had followed soon after, then the apartment itself. Her last remaining family, an older brother in another state, hadn't returned her calls. Her daughter was the only reason she kept moving, one step at a time, even when her legs wanted to give up. That night, as the wind howled through the empty streets and Lily began to shiver harder in her arms, Emily realized she was out of options. She stopped beneath a flickering streetlight, pulled Lily closer and whispered, "Just a little longer, baby. Mommy's going to find us somewhere warm." If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of compassion, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that even in the coldest nights, there's still light somewhere waiting to find us. Emily's feet ached from walking. Every store and cafe she'd passed was closed, every doorway already claimed by others seeking shelter from the storm. She finally sank onto a bench near a small park, snow gathering in her hair. She wrapped her coat tighter around Lily, humming softly to keep her awake. She didn't know how much longer she could keep pretending to be strong. That's when she noticed the man across the street. Tall, dressed, in a brown overcoat, gloves, and a scarf. He was locking the door of a small bookstore that still had its lights on. Through the glass, shelves of books glowed under warm yellow light. A scene that looked impossibly comforting from where Emily sat. She hadn't realized she was staring until he glanced up and noticed her. Their eyes met for only a second, but it was enough for him to hesitate before walking toward her. He crossed the street, the crunch of his boots loud in the quiet night. Emily immediately straightened, instinctively pulling Lily closer. The man stopped a few feet away, his breath visible in the air. "You look frozen," he said softly. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to answer. She'd learned not to trust kindness. It usually came with conditions. "We're fine," she murmured, though her voice trembled. But the man didn't leave. He looked at Lily, who peeked out from the blanket, her lips blue from the cold. His face softened. "Look, I know it's not my business," he said gently, "but the storm's getting worse. My name's Daniel. I own that bookstore over there. I was about to lock up, but I can't just walk away knowing you're sitting out here with your little one." Emily shook her head. "I can't impose. We'll be fine. Just till morning." But Daniel didn't listen. "No one's fine in this weather," he said, and before she could protest again, he had opened the bookstore door and motioned for her to come in. Something about his tone, calm, steady, without pity, made her follow. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. The contrast hit her so hard she nearly cried. Daniel guided her to a chair near a small heater. He poured 2 cups of hot chocolate from a thermos on the counter and handed her one. "It's not much," he said, "but it's something warm." Emily held the cup like it was gold. Lily's eyes widened as she sipped the sweet drink, her color slowly returning. Daniel smiled at the sight. "You two can stay here tonight," he said quietly. "It's safe and warm. I'll lock up after." Emily tried to refuse again, but the fatigue in her body betrayed her. She finally nodded, whispering, "Thank you." The night stretched long, but for the first time in weeks, Emily and Lily slept in warmth. Daniel stayed up, sitting behind the counter with a book he didn't read. He kept glancing over, making sure the heater stayed on, making sure they were okay. Something about the sight of them, a mother holding her child so protectively, stirred something deep in him. Daniel had once been married. His wife Claire had passed away 3 years earlier after a long illness. Since then, the bookstore had become his refuge. It was easier to keep busy than to feel. but seeing Emily reminded him that life outside those walls still existed, messy, fragile, and real. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the front windows, turning the snow outside into diamonds. Emily woke to the smell of fresh coffee. Daniel had brewed a pot and placed a small paper bag of pastries on the table. "They're from the bakery down the street," he said. "I figured you both could use breakfast." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. "You didn't have to," she began, but Daniel interrupted softly. "I know, but I wanted to." Over the next hour, conversation flowed slowly. Emily told him bits of her story, the lost job, the apartment, the struggle to keep Lily fed. Daniel listened without interrupting, without offering false sympathy. When she finished, she looked down, embarrassed. "I sound pathetic," she murmured. Daniel shook his head. "You sound like a mother who's doing everything she can to protect her child. That's not pathetic, that's strength." Something inside Emily broke at those words. Not in a bad way, but in the way a frozen river breaks when spring finally comes. She stayed through the morning, helping him tidy the shop while Lily played quietly in a corner with an old teddy bear Daniel had found in a donation box. When it came time for them to leave, Daniel hesitated. "I have a spare room above the shop," he said finally. "It used to be my office. It's not much, but it's warm and private. You're welcome to stay for a few days, just until you figure things out." Emily stared at him, stunned. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because someone once did the same for me." Over the next several days, Emily and Lily slowly found rhythm in their new temporary home. Emily helped around the store, cleaning shelves, organizing books, greeting customers. Lily became a little mascot for the bookstore, her laughter echoing between the aisles as regulars smiled at her tiny boots and puffy jacket. Daniel started to notice something he hadn't in years, the sound of life filling a space that had long been too quiet. At night, after closing, they'd share simple dinners upstairs. Emily would tell Lily bedtime stories while Daniel listened from the next room. Each night, the air between them softened, cautious strangers slowly learning to trust one another. But Emily's heart was still scarred. Every time she laughed, a shadow followed, the fear that it wouldn't last. She told herself this was temporary, that she shouldn't get attached. Yet when she watched Daniel helping Lily build a snowman outside the shop one afternoon, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, she'd found more than shelter. One evening, as snow fell again outside, Emily stood by the window, watching the glow of the streetlights blur through the frost. Daniel came up behind her, setting a cup of tea in her hands. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to hate winter, too many memories, but now, it doesn't feel so cold anymore." Emily turned to him, eyes glistening. "You've given us so much, Daniel. I don't know how to ever repay you." He smiled softly. "You already have." Months passed. Emily found a part-time job at a nearby community. She started saving money, and every evening she and Lily returned to the bookstore, their safe haven. The bond between her and Daniel grew deeper, built on kindness, quiet understanding, and the shared warmth of healing hearts. One night in early spring, Daniel found Emily sitting by the shop window again, lost in thought. "You're thinking about moving out," he said gently. She nodded. "I found a small place near the park. It's time Lily and I have our own space again." Daniel forced a smile. "That's wonderful." But his chest tightened as he said it. Emily reached out, touching his hand. "You were the first person to look at me and not see a burden. You saw me, the person I was trying so hard to protect under all the fear. You gave us warmth when the world turned its back." He met her gaze, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "You gave me something too, Emily. You reminded me what it feels like to care again." For a moment neither spoke. Outside, the last of the snow melted into the dark streets, the season quietly shifting. Weeks later, as Emily packed her few belongings, Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve and handed him her teddy bear. "For you," she said, "so you don't forget us." Daniel knelt down, his throat tight. "I could never forget you, kiddo." As they stepped out into the sunlight, Emily turned back one last time. Daniel stood in the doorway of the bookstore, watching them with that same warm smile, the one that had saved her that night in the snow. Emily's voice trembled as she whispered, "You offered us a warm hand and gave us a new beginning. I'll never forget that." She walked away with Lily, her heart full, not of sorrow but of gratitude and something even brighter, hope. And somewhere behind her, Daniel looked up at the spring sky, feeling for the first time in years that maybe the world wasn't so lonely after all. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, even the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what does kindness mean to you?